Breaking up with my girlfriend of 2 years who had childhood trauma, how do I overcome hard feelings about it not working out? I met my now ex-girlfriend 2 years ago, and she quickly opened up about her very difficult past of being neglected and abused as a child. After this moment she rarely wanted to talk about it, though I noticed she was not doing good. During this summer I noticed her becoming more and more emotionally distant. I tried being there for her, but it was hard when I felt she never wanted to talk about it. Soon it turned to her almost not wanting to talk to me at all. She said it was because of this hard time, and I totally understood that. Even though I felt guilty about it, I tried telling her by the middle of the summer that it made me sad and insecure about our relationship that she never was the first one to call me / text me / wanting to meet etc. I would say I have some attachment issues, which led to me easily putting the blame on me for being too needy right after expressing this disappointment in her not engaging in our relationship, something she also agreed on during our arguments. I really tried thinking her not engaging as much in us was because of her having a rough time, but eventually I realized this didn't work out for me. At the start of this autumn we both moved different places, and I noticed her sliding away more and more. I expressed a wish for her to come up with a solution of how we could make it work, since if I were to not contact her as much, a day's contact would basically end up with a simple good morning / good night text and nothing else. For the majority of our relationship I've been the one to tell her about my day, my feelings etc., and she has been an amazing support and partner. However, I've missed her coming to me when she was sad, angry, or whatever. It was usually me noticing her sliding away and then asking her about it, then she would possibly give me a glimpse of what was going on, but not always. I've always told her that I want her to be able to be more open in our relationship, and we had multiple conversations of how I can make it easier for her to open up. I've also said it would be easier for me if she would explicitly express I need space because I feel bad so I wouldn't have to be insecure every time she disappears. Though I never experienced her trying to do anything about this. However, it ended recently with her saying she couldn't stand me being insecure about us. And I said I couldn't stand her not being engaged in us. It sounds harsh, but actually we ended it in a very nice and sort of mutual way, based on the fact that neither of us were happy in the relationship. The difficult thing is I still love her so much, and I easily blame myself for pressuring her to open up and engage more in us. If you have read this far, please give me your reaction to this. Have you experienced being in a relationship with somebody who's emotionally distant / affected by trauma? Did you also feel guilty for wanting more of your partner than they could give? Did it end in you breaking up? I don't want any it's this person's fault you broke up. I am very good at blaming myself. I do need some similar stories to relate to though. Next story 2. My BF copies me when I do something wrong. One time, my boyfriend and I were in the car, getting ready to go to shopping. He asked me if I was going to work the next day, and I nodded as a yes. Moments later I talked to him and he stayed quiet. I asked over and over what was wrong and he kept ignoring me. We walked from the parking lot to the store and I tried to hold his arm but he dragged it away. Until finally, he broke and said you didn't answer my question. I explained to him that I nodded and I thought he saw me nod. Mind you, I was in a normal state and we had a regular conversation just seconds before. So there wasn't any context for me to ignore him. No reason for me to be mad or upset with him. Moments like this happen all the time. He does things right back at me. I explained to him that I don't like this because I don't mean to make these mistakes, but he intentionally makes me feel bad by doing it back. After that talk, he said he would try to stop it and instead just communicate with me when I've done something wrong. I also apologized and told him I'll be more attentive. Today, we did our routine night video call and I told him I was getting tickets for a concert. I was focused on getting my bank info in and checking what seats we were gonna sit in. When I finished filling the forms out, I turned to him and asked him how we was. He didn't respond. I asked over and over and it got to the point where I thought my mic was broken, so I left the call and returned. He acknowledged me when I came back. I asked him if he could hear me before I left and he said he couldn't. Then, minutes later, he admitted that he did hear me and said that I ignored his multiple questions. I told him I got too focused and I apologized. I asked him what his questions were and he proceeded to ignore me a little bit until he warmed back up. I am upset because it feels like whenever I do something wrong, he intentionally does it back to me. He said before that he does it because he felt like sh*t. I wanted to do better but I just wish he would communicate these things with me without making me feel like how he felt. I know I have a poor attention span, but I really do pay attention to him most of the time. I rarely go on my phone when we're together. And I choose to ignore my notifs PC. I enjoy our time together that much. But one time, I sent a reply to a friend while we were on video call and he ignored me again when I tried to talk to him. He got mad because he said he needed to go to bed soon and I was just on my phone. He left the call. I'm afraid that this continuing behavior is going to keep upsetting me. Or do I need to be more understanding that these things mean a lot to him? I recognize where I make mistakes and I really want to improve my attention for him, but every time he does this I feel like I can't do enough for him. Next story 3. My mother says she is done with our relationship and blames me and my fiancé. For context, I have always been quite close with my mom, but we have always had ups and downs and fights. I was a university student from 2012 to 2019, one of my schools was in a different country and one was a province away, but I would come home for the summers to work. In 2020, I moved to a town 100 kilometers away from my parents for work and have continued to work and live here. In 2020, I would often go home to visit my family on weekends as I had very few friends in my new town and the pandemic made it difficult to meet people. In 2021, I got called to the bar, became a lawyer, and I moved into a new place and met my now fiancé. I now live with him and spend the majority of my limited free time with him. He works shift work so our schedules don't often align and quality time is rare. I work long hours as a lawyer and am already struggling with burnout. I do make an effort to call my parents 2/3 times per week and I visit once a month, sometimes more, but my mom accuses me of not caring / not wanting a relationship with her and she said it's been ongoing since I've been with my fiancé. I also think she believes that we spend much more time with my fiancé's family as they live 5 minutes away from us, but this isn't the case. We see them maybe once a month as well and my fiancé rarely calls them. To make matters worse, there have been ongoing issues between my mom and my fiancé. My mom thinks he is too sensitive, yet ironically my fiancé feels like he is on eggshells around her as she has become incredibly upset over conversations out of the blue. An example of this would be my fiancé and I visiting my parents a few weeks after we got engaged. We had seen them the day after the engagement and celebrated together. During this visit, they asked if we had done any wedding planning. My fiancé explained some of our ideas but emphasized that nothing was booked yet. My mother was clearly emotional and upset and had an outburst at us stating, "Well, it seems like you have it all figured out and you don't need us for anything." We fought later about how she felt it was disrespectful for my fiancé to be telling them how the wedding would be instead of hearing it from me. She feels like him and his family steamroll me. I don't feel like this at all. My mom then asked me to talk to my fiancé and future mother-in-law about how my mom wants to have my future in-laws as guests at the wedding and doesn't want them to be stressed about decorating, etc. This conversation went down horribly as my fiancé took this as my mom trying to take control of the wedding and to cut his parents out from helping. His mom is a hobbyist wedding decorator and loves to help out. This caused massive drama with everyone and my mom eventually conceded and said his mom can help and she felt like she was being wrongly accused of trying to take over the wedding. I was angry because I didn't understand why my mom insisted on me having that conversation anyway. My life for the last couple of months has been hell because of this drama. I am not enjoying wedding planning at all and I've let everyone know that. Then last night my mom and I had a massive argument over the phone where she said she was done with our relationship and that I can let my fiancé's family plan the whole wedding, and she just went off about how terrible and disrespectful I am / have become over the last 2 years. I don't even know what to do anymore and I'm wondering how I can resolve things with my mother without just letting her steamroll me. Comment. 2 to 3 times a week? Stand your ground. That's a ridiculously large amount of time for a parent to expect from somebody that's an adult with a career. As far as I'm concerned, given the inordinate amount of time you are spending with her, and the fact that she is demanding more, be grateful that the trash is threatening to take itself to the curb. What she is doing is emotionally abusive to you. I used to speak to my mom maybe once every 1 to 2 weeks. I used to watch my wife go through this very same thing constantly until her mother passed when my wife was not quite 40. They'd spend a lot of time in frequent contact, then her mom would get mad at her for not being in even more frequent contact. Despite the fact we had 2 kids, wife was working full-time and she and I needed time to carve out for ourselves. They'd cut contact for a few weeks and start the cycle over again. The best advice I can give is when she tries to reach out again is set some firm ground rules for frequency of contact, and she's going to need to deal with the fact your life no longer revolves around her. And absolutely, positively stand up for your better half and your kids if you have them down the line. You come after my wife, it'll quickly become a cold day in hell before I ever talk to you again. If she doesn't live by them, enforce them. Your mom sounds GD exhausting to engage with, and I'm assuming your complete lack of any boundary setting. Let her force you into a conversation you didn't know the context of, haven't told her you will be placing your wedding, etc., is a sign that the exhausting behavior is your norm and also toxic. I do not have a good relationship with my mom. I talk to her on the phone 2 to 4 times a year, but will chat in text/messenger once a month-ish. My husband is a mama's boy and they are supremely close. They talk on the phone once every 2 to 3 weeks, used to be closer to once every 1 to 2 weeks, and they have text conversations probably 3 times a week, unless one of us is sick, in which case she texts daily. Again, that's the normal for someone really close to his mother. What your mom is asking for is absolutely abnormal. I see why your mom is blaming your fiancé. The combination of your job and being in a relationship with a much more normal and stable person has upset her central control over you and your life. Either she wants you to believe he's toxic to her, that control back, or she honestly believes all relationships work in the controlling and manipulative way she does in hers, so obviously he's controlling you if she isn't. She says she's done okay. Alright mom, I understand the decision you're making and I'll be here when you decide you want to work on it. Your mom is the type of manipulative person who has to be the center of everything, and she won't be gone very long at all. If she did leave permanently, who would she control and bully? Do I think you should actually keep a relationship with your mother? No, absolutely not, because the way you let her treat your fiancé is sad. You should be standing up for him, and the way she would treat any kids you have, if you choose to have any, would be the same way she treated you as a kid. Unless you had more than one, then there would definitely be a favorite and she would scar a whole new generation. You need to set boundaries. Mom, I can talk to you on the phone once a week. Let's make the most of it. If you can't accept that, we need to take another break from each other. Also, she needs to be the one to visit you. You are too busy with your career, relationship, and wedding planning to be driving 100 miles to please your mother. Tell her. No more visits before the wedding.